Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast, episode 16. My name is Matt Wood, and today we're talking about the Knights of the Vine with Chik Brenneman of Baker Family Wines in West Sacramento and commander of the Chancellery chapter in Sacramento, and Gordon MacKay, commander of the Lodi chapter. Knights of the Vine has chapters all over the United States promoting the love of wine, and although the roots of it in the U.S. go back to the 60s, its parent organization, the FICB, goes back to 1300s France. We learn about the history of the organization, how it's adapting to today's world, and get some good history on the taste of Vin. Hope you enjoy. Here we go.
My name is Chik Brenneman. I'm the managing member and partner for Baker Family Wines, but also in relation to the Knights of the Vine organization, I am the commander of the Chancellery chapter, which was the charter chapter of Knights of the Vine when it came over from Europe in the early 1960s.
And I'm Gordon MacKay. I'm the commander of the Lodi chapter, live in the Lodi area, been part of the Knights of the Vine since 2014, and have a long and established history as a wine consumer. So there you go.
It's important for the job.
Yeah.
You don't really need to know anything about, wine to like it.
Yes.
So
What year did you get involved with the Knights of the Vine, Chik?
I think about 2014, about the same time that
Okay.
Gordon did. Chancellery basically started in the early 60s and went through a few commanders. Seemingly your commander for life or until you decide to give it up.
Okay.
But I became the commander in about 2016. There was a lull in the leadership there, and my arm got twisted significantly anytime I saw one of our chapter members. And then I started getting calls from the grand commander, and finally I just said yes.
It's good. Kind of
Yeah.
guilt tripped.
Yeah, it was one of those things, but it's good. I mean, it's all for fun, it's all for good, and it's all for philanthropy too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about how Knights of the Vine got started, what its history is? It goes back quite a long ways, right?
Yeah, I was doing a little research myself in terms of what the history was generally, and there's and I found this. I don't know how old this flyer is, but it was a PDF of it in our Dropbox folder. But in it, it tells the story of back in like 1300, the 13th century, something like that in France. Basically, the royalty established that they needed to have control over the production of wine from kind of the beginning to the end, mostly because people kept getting poisoned.
Okay.
So there, that was kind of an occupational hazard of being a king or a queen back then, I guess, is that people are always trying to kill you. So they thought, well, we need people to like produce this stuff and then make sure that it's okay and then taste it. And that started this group called the it's not the Confrères de something or other. It was basically it was the
Federation International, the
Confrérie Bachique.
FICB. That's easier.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Yeah,
or the translation, the International Federation of Wine Brotherhoods.
Well, there was a thing. The thing going back originally, the Conseil des Chansons, which basically stands for the Master Cup Bearers, which I guess is basically that's kind of where the whole thing of tasting the product before have somebody else have it and to make sure that it was okay, and it kind of that sort of morphed into the whole kind of what we're somewhat used to in terms of the tradition of wine service and how that works. And then apparently that whole history in France fell apart after the French Revolution because there was no nobility left because they killed them all. And then gradually, with the beginning of the appellation system in France and the regulations relating production of wine, it started to create this associations of people who regulated it and looked after it, and that was the Chevaliers at Duceppe and that sort of stuff, which was the beginning of the what is in North America the Knights of the Vine.
Yeah, and then it actually expanded a lot during the American period of Prohibition, because the French basically they couldn't sell their wine to the U.S. And so they created a lot of these local groups within, Burgundy or in Bordeaux, that they were promoting their own wine to their own people.
Right. It was very regionally particular.
Okay.
And there was probably one for the Rhone and the Loire and who knows, but the famous ones that people have probably heard of are the Burgundy one and the Bordeaux one, as opposed to the Chevalier du Cep, which is, vine nights or wine nights, was more dedicated to just sort of global, like just wine in general. So it wasn't region specific.
Okay.
And then in the 60s, a fellow named Norman Gates, and I don't know what his involvement was with the International Order, but somehow he was basically the North American chapter, for lack of a better term, of this more international organization was developed, which was the Knights of the Vine. So the North American part of it goes back to the 60s.
So he sort of brought just a North American chapter over.
Yeah, I mean, presumably it started off as the Chancellery chapter. So he would hit this Mr. Gates fellow, presumably was a Sacramento guy or a Napa guy or something.
He was Sacramento.
Right.
Sacramento. And then that was taken over at some point by Mike Dukas, who was the Grand Commander for the National and also the Chancellery Commander. And then Mike was actually the commander until about 2014. So he was a long-running commander for Chancellery. During that time, there was a lot of expansion of members and a lot of increases in the numbers of chapters, Lodi being one of them, San Francisco, Houston, Los Angeles, Orange County. I mean, when we actually looked at, we were actually recently at the national meeting in Texas, and we actually looked at some of the chapters that are no longer there.
Oh,
I mean, there had to have been a couple of dozen chapters across the country at one point.
okay. How many are there now, approximately?
There's 16.
16. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, ranging in size from the Austin chapter is the biggest, and they got about 120 members.
Okay.
Down to, I don't know how many there are in like the Arizona chapter now. It's pretty small.
It's pretty small.
And it's not very active.
Yeah, it's not active.
So, I mean, there's chapters down to like 15 or 20 people, basically. So, where Lodi is around about 100.
Okay.
So
pretty one of the larger
decent,
ones.
Pretty decent size.
And we're about 50 or 60 in the Sacramento area.
Okay.
And I think that, we certainly we do a lot of recruiting to bring in folks to keep the tradition moving on.
Who comprises most of the membership of an average Knights of the Vine chapter?
Well, it's 100% wine lovers, but it sort of depends upon what the chapter is in itself and what the demographics of the chapter are. We don't have very many professionals in the Chancellery chapter, whereas Lodi, with the high concentration of wineries in the Lodi area, you have probably the most supreme knights, which is the highest level of knight that you can have, just because of the high concentration of grape growers and winemakers in the Lodi area. So it's really just lovers of wine, people who want to promote. I mean, at one point it was like promoting the wines of California, but we've sort of moved on from that. It's wines of California, and the world.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, the Lodi chapter was, when it was started, it was mostly people who were connected in the industry that were part of it. So it was a lot of growers and wine producers. And this is back in the 80s, before there weren't a lot of wineries in Lodi, but there was, tens of thousands of acres of grapes.
Yeah.
So, and these people were, I guess, a significant portion of the Chancellery chapter at the time, and they wanted to create their own chapter, which was closer to home. And then over the years, it's morphed. A lot of that old guard is still there, actually.
Okay.
Like the Kautses and the Fries, and they're really well known growers in the Lodi area. But generally the people that join now tend to be, they're obviously wine lovers. A lot of them are home winemakers. They're involved with the
Okay.
Lodi Amateur Vintners Association, and then there's some cross pollination that goes on, and and just people get invited to events and think, well, this is kind of cool, so I want to be part of it. Yeah.
And a lot of the events are, we try to throw an educational twist to them. There's some learning component to them. There's also a lot of cross-chapter camaraderie. We're associated with the Lodi and Lake Tahoe chapters. We sort of cross over on events there. And to some extent, San Francisco. So we want to make it a learning situation for everybody. It's not just sitting around drinking wine, but we also try to throw a learning component: wine and food pairing, wines of a certain region, wines of a certain variety.
Okay, so kind of a theme for each of the meeting. Is there a set meeting schedule every month or every other month?
Every chapter kind of does their own thing.
Okay.
The Lodi, we have a meeting second Thursday of the month is our scheduled chapter thing, and so we'll do some kind of event, ranging from bring a bottle of wine and an appetizer to somebody's house, and we're just going to have let's drink some wine time, or Thirsty Thursdays or whatever. I know that's what the Houston chapter calls them. The all the way from that to like this Thursday, we're having our annual barbecue, and the backyard barbecue, and we charge for that and raffle wine off and raise some money and have a lot of fun. And we have a lot of people involved in our group who they love wine, but they also love food. So they know how to put on a party. So it's a good barbecue.
Yeah. And then we have an event coming up in a week. It's a French dinner, and we're very fortunate to have. She's a level 4 som right now.
Okay.
I don't know if she's going to go to master, but she's very, very smart at what she does, and so she'll basically take a menu and pair some wines with it, and so we'll do a French dinner. It's sort of going to be based, Burgundian based. So that'll be, and then she'll give a little presentation during the program as to why she chose this particular wine or why the food was there. So
yeah, that's great. A little background on the pairings of them. How does one become a member of Knights of the Vine aside from having to love wine?
There's a form to fill out.
Okay.
Expect people to indicate why they're interested in if they have any background in wine or what their knowledge level is. But and then there's a fee, obviously, because you get some bling when you join, a taste of van and a certificate and a pin, and the membership cost for the first year to become a member is $250. So I just tell people, if you can fill out the form and you have $250, you're in.
Okay.
Yeah, but the form also helps us decide at what level of membership they are, because we have a night membership, we have a master night membership, or a supreme night membership, which usually goes to somebody that's been long standing or very contributes significantly to the industry. But professional members such as myself, I would be a master night.
Okay.
But
people who are in the industry, who are either winery owners, they have a lot of that in Lodi. If someone's a significant grower or a winery owner, or are somehow connected to the retail end of it, the selling of the wine as well, those people would come in as master knights. Most people, the standard generic thing is they get inducted as a knight, and then depending upon who they are and what they do, they can move up the food chain, I guess.
Okay.
Pretty unusual. The list of Supreme Knights is pretty limited, and now those people, that designation has to be approved by the national board. So there's a whole process involved for that. So that's kind of a special.
Okay.
thing.
And I think, Gordon, you had mentioned that people being inducted as knights, did that recently change?
Yes, that was for years. In fact, it's probably still on the website. The classification was that the men would be inducted as knights, and the women would be inducted as gentle ladies or master ladies.
Okay.
Or supreme
ladies.
Okay.
Within the last 4 or 5 years, there had been pushback from several chapters, Lodi being one of them, suggesting that that there was people had issues with the classification of gentle lady, and it seemed a little, kind of chauvinistic, for lack of a better term. And then there was a significant push from the Bay Area chapter and Pat's group. In fact, they had a kind of a little mini protest at one of their assemblages where people are knighted to make the point. And it ended up before the national board. In fact, there were a meeting of the chapters last year when we had the national meeting here in Lodi, and the chapters voted to have just one designation, so to get rid of the separation or the difference between men and women, and just everybody would be inducted as a knight, and that was approved by the board last fall. And we had several members become members in the Lodi chapter who were not willing to join if they couldn't be inducted as a knight. So we had at least 3 or 4 women that were recently inducted who were very pleased with the change.
Okay, that's great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned some of the knights and supreme knights and master knights. How many levels exist?
Well, three levels right there, but then within every chapter you have what we call the cadre. And the cadre consists of a commander, sometimes a vice commander. There is a board within each chapter that consists of a secretary, a treasurer, and then we have a little fun with some of those within chapter positions. Somebody who's really good at food preparation could be a dame de gastronomie, or somebody who's really good at planning could be a chargé d'affaires, or we do have the master cupbearer as well, the person that we have a ceremonial taste of vin. I'm not too sure if the listenership understands what a taste of vin is, but it used to be the cup that the cellar dwellers in the old dark cellars would use to pour a little wine into the cup. I mean, this is on a production side, but pour a little wine into the cup, and then they'd shine their candle at it, and depending upon the angle, and they were silver, and depending upon the angle, they could tell if the wine was brown, or nice bright red, or if the wine was clear. The other things that you can do is, because there's certain indentations around the side of it, you'd sip up one side and it might enhance the tannin structure, sip up another side and it might enhance the fruitiness structure.
Okay.
So
I didn't realize that
we
was
have
part
many
of-
different possibilities. And then, of course, as people become less involved with the chapter, we give them an emeritus title, and it's all token, and we just give them an emeritus title and say whatever you can contribute is fine. But we'd like to have this cadre work as a group to promote the events and sort of take the load off the commanders a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
And again, I think the one thing we know for sure is every chapter does things differently. So in Lodi we have the cadre, or what we call the board, which is nine members, and then there's the commander, the vice commander, the secretary, and the treasurer, and then we have we finally have a master photographer, so we have somebody who's guaranteed to be taking pictures, because that's always one of the issues was we need photos for the Arbor magazine, which is a magazine that the national KOV publishes twice a year, which is kind of a summary of what all the chapters are doing.
Okay.
And that's one of the benefits of membership, is people get this magazine.
And then when you're a member of one chapter, you're a member of all chapters. I mean, you're welcome to participate in any event. There's a national calendar that, if you happen to be traveling to North Carolina and they're having their grand assemblage, I think Gordon got in on that at one point, and or to Houston, or just it's open. It's basically open arms, and even there's a lot of international events. In fact, some people are just coming back from the FICB gathering in Portugal.
Okay.
And then we have another one coming up next year, I think, in Italy. Am I correct there, Gordon?
There's
The year
I don't know
out.
if I know there's something going on in Croatia or Slovakia or something like that. The FICB, which Chik alluded to, is the Federation Internationale des Confrères Bashik, which is the International Order of Wine Brotherhoods, and that was created in the 60s, and KOV has been part of that since its inception. And it really is I wasn't able to make it to Portugal because of some other things that we had going on, but wow, the things that people were posting on social media and the pictures of the things that they were doing, it was like, holy, sorry, I missed that. Looks like a great event. So, I mean, there's really some great opportunities for people to travel and kind of get together with like-minded people, I guess.
Any idea how many countries have sort of branches of the FICB? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know the number, but it's it's significant, and it's certainly all over Europe and generally anywhere that kind of produces wine has got their fingers in it somehow.
Yeah. Couple of Finland, South Korea. They actually opened up chapters, but they've gone on to they've diverged a little bit. I think that they're still in the FICB, but they used to be associated with the North American Brotherhood. Okay. But now I think that they're more direct with FICB.
How did COVID affect the Knights of the Vine? Did you have to move meetings virtual, or did you see any kind of drop in interest? Or
we recently inducted people who I call them, they're members of the COVID class, because they were scheduled to be inducted in 2020. In fact, we had a assemblage, which is the annual event where we knight people and induct new members, was scheduled to be up at Ironstone, because Gail Coates, who's the sort of the matriarch of the Ironstone family, she had been approved to be elevated to Supreme Lady. So we were basically having a big party up at Ironstone, and we were going to do the assemblage there, and that got canceled probably about 2 weeks before it was going to happen.
Okay.
And then I don't know what happened in some of the other chapters. Lodi basically went into sort of stasis mode for quite a while. We didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
I think at that time the whole idea, I've seen so common now, like Zoom and all these video things, but at that time it was a bit new for everybody. Sure. So we didn't really make the transition as quickly as we could have. And then in 2021 we started up again with sort of outside things at wineries. I think our first session was probably like in May of 2021, and we had an outdoor meeting at Viaggio, and then just kind of went from there as the rules gradually changed. But yeah, it put a dent in our plans for pretty much all of 2020.
Similar with Chancellery, our last event was our crab feed. We have an annual crab feed in March of 2020, a couple of weeks before the shutdown. Yeah. And then we had to cancel our assemblage as well that year. Then we actually started back up. We just went into this suspended animation phase, and we just started back up in 2021 with a crab feed, very limited, outdoors here on our patio at BFW. Okay. And it was just it just worked. There was some chapters that did this virtual tasting. They graduated into virtual tastings. Okay. Jean-Charles Boisset, who owns or is the principal with Raymond Vineyards, he would host tastings, and you would contact the San Francisco chapter. They would send out a wine kit, and there were gatherings of, close-knit people, even within other chapters, that would participate in this virtual tasting. And
Okay.
of course, Jean-Charles is quite animated, and he can make anything rock.
Yeah.
Okay. So so it just really varied. And then, we were sort of sweating a little bit because we had the crab feed planned, but we were still waiting for Yolo County to give us the okay. But then there were places that relaxed their guidelines a little bit earlier, and they were able to, get together a little bit sooner. But California being California, that's what we were forced to do. So,
yeah, and part of it was, one is there's one thing, which is what the rules were, and then the second thing was, well, what are people comfortable with?
Of course.
Because even though we may have got to the point where, okay, well, so we're all right for people to get together, it's like, do we really want to do that? They're our demographic, tends to skew a little bit older, and so we're a little concerned about that as well. So, so it was a gradual return to normal.
Yeah.
So,
There been any noticeable changes in the Knights of the Vine recently? Obviously, it goes back pretty far, so I wouldn't expect there to be any large scale changes too quickly. But any evolution or anything of note?
I mean, I think the certainly the membership and the change in terms of the way getting rid of the variation of gender kind of thing, I think is one of the signs that we're kind of changing with the times, as it were. And Chik mentioned, we started out probably our focus here was pretty California centric in terms of wine, and I think now it's more the wines of America. So, and that's I think reflective of the fact that there's pretty much a wine industry in every state. So so when we were in Texas for the national meeting, there's all the wines that they're pouring are all they're Texas wines, and some of them are pretty good.
Yeah,
some of them aren't. Yeah. But that's the way. That's the same way everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it. We have a certain amount of we like to think it's grand, but maybe it's just camp. I don't know as far as when we do our formal meetings, but it's all kind of laid back and for fun too. So I think it may have been in the past perhaps maybe a little bit more hoity-toity kind of idea.
Okay.
But it's really not like that anymore. We just like to have a good time.
It's a tongue-in-cheek skit is what it is. That's what we try to make it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's certain well-meant gestures of you have to answer this question, and it's just funny to see the reactions of folks there. But so we've morphed a little bit there, but I think also one of the important parts and one of the focuses on Knights of the Vine is also bringing in the younger generations to keep it going. I mean, I've seen a lot of organizations basically get old and then they go away.
Yeah.
And so bringing people on to loving wine. I mean, that's the job of winemakers like myself, people that like Gordon that participate in sensory analysis, to say, what can we contribute to get this younger demographic, and to bring it in to perpetuate the order.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of the our chapter has established bylaws where we kind of guarantee that there's some sort of turnover in the leadership.
Okay.
And that was really the doing of the last commander, where we implemented essentially a term limit to how long someone can be a commander for, because the feeling was we really wanted to get people involved with the leadership so that there was some continuity.
Okay.
Because some of the chapters have had, the same, like Chik referred to, it's kind of like commander for life sort of thing. The and part of that is because, particularly in some of the smaller groups, there isn't really anybody who's prepared to take it on. But anybody who's involved with like Rotary or any sort of essentially groups of volunteers knows that you need to have some sort of turnover, or the thing basically kind of runs out of steam.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
So that's important from our perspective.
Yeah.
The other thing because Chik may want to talk about the scholarships.
Oh, yeah. So each chapter, usually, as their board decrees, so we have events, we charge for these events, we charge a nominal amount above the event, or we have fundraisers like Gordon, they'll do a wine raffle. Houston chapter does a silent auction and a live auction at their assemblages, but we've all got a benefactor. And it just depends upon the chapter's budget at the end of its fiscal year, whether there's money left over to fund generally educational programs in wine. The Chancellery chapter, along with Tahoe, Monterey, Los Angeles, we fund a scholarship for students of viticulture and enology in the master's program at UC Davis. Texas is a little bit different. They fund, I think it's the Conrad Hilton School of Hospitality at the University of Texas. And so, and the amount of money that is contributed, it's at least at our level, with the UC Davis scholarship, it's not enough to fund an endowment, but the Houston chapter has been able to set up an endowment, and so they will fund that endowment up to $10,000 a year, and so that endowment has just grown. So there is a philanthropic feel to it as well, but really it just depends upon each chapter's wish, and so we try to do that there. The UC Davis scholarship was actually set up in the 1960s by Norman Gates.
So it's been there for
a while, but it was not used for a long time. When I was a master's student there, it was listed as one of the scholarships that you could apply for, but I don't think there was a lot of money in the account. So I didn't get that scholarship.
No.
Funny. I bet you they regret that now. There is a website, and then just like any website that's run by a bunch of volunteers, it can be really up to date, and it can be
or not.
And but it's kov.org, and that refers you to the national website, and then also with links to the individual chapters around the states. Some of the chapters have their own website that they promote. Some chapters have Facebook pages. They're generally the Facebook pages are closed, and by membership. But really, probably just going to the kov.org and just click on more information or fill out an information form. There's actually an application form on that website as well. So. And like I say, as Gordon said, $250 in ability to write legibly will get you in.
Yeah, I think like Chik said, most chapters have a website. I know the Lodi one is somewhat out of date, because that's one of the things we don't have as a webmaster. But certainly the national site, the kov.org, is a pretty good source of information, and certainly there's contact information there for the chapters as well. So if somebody wants to reach out to contact the Lodi chapter or the Chancellery chapter about membership or any kind of details, we're happy to answer questions on that regard. So because we're always looking for interested people.
Anything planned for the future of Knights of the Vine? Any way you see anything changing or
The Chancellery cadre is growing somewhat. When my wife Polly and I first took it over, it was hard to get people involved. So we pretty much handled it on our own, but we've since brought in additional people to be part of the cadre over time. And so certainly the number of events grows from year to year.
That's great.
One thing that we always try to be conscious of is when Lodi's having an event, maybe we try not to make them conflict with other chapters' events. And so there is some, there is the master calendar that you can take a look at, but certainly in diversity of events as well, because we just can't keep on having the same thing over and over again. I mean, we do that every year with the assemblage, which is why we do more of a tongue-in-cheek kind of skit with the assemblage and sort of mix it up, whether we go to a winery or have it at Winecrest in Lodi.
There you go.
There you go. I mean, and so, but no, just, diversity of events and mixing some things up, and, certainly it's all for a good cause.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some obviously areas of the country that aren't represented by a chapter. So the national board is always interested in, if there's people that are, thinking of, I'm in Seattle area and there's no KOV chapter in the Seattle area. How do I start one? Well, that's always a possibility as well. If there are people who are in an area where they think like, that'd be kind of fun to do, but I don't have anything to join. So can I start it myself? And yeah, you can.
Okay.
You just have to have enough interested people and somebody who wants to take the initiative. Because I don't think I can emphasize enough the appeal of having the chapters across the country, and being able to go to events that other chapters are putting on, or even just being somewhere and you can contact the local representatives and they'll tell you where to go and what to do and can set you up with kind of sort of entry to things that you might not be able to get into otherwise. There's all kinds of advantages to it. I always tell the story of when we were stuck in Tahoe during the blizzard of whatever it was a year and a half ago. And to the point where like all the roads in and out of the Tahoe area were closed. 80 was closed and 50. And so, we were staying at this Airbnb. And so we managed to get a couple of extra days there, but it was then it was like, well, you guys have to move out because whoever's going to be here is going to be here. So and we're kind of like, well, where are we going to go? Are we going to end up like sleeping in the truck and we're waiting for the roads to open? And that was when I called Ernie, the commander of the Tahoe chapter, and said, Ernie, we're trapped. Can we crash with you? Because he lives in Truckee. And he was like, sure, come on over.
And you didn't even know him at the time, did you?
I'd met him at the 2019 annual meeting, but that was about it. Because I met him that was the last annual meeting before COVID. And so I knew him from that a little bit. And so I got in touch with him and went over to his fabulous house and had a great dinner and some good wine. And then the next day the roads opened and we were on our way. So it was fabulous. But it's kind of the benefits of membership, I guess, from that perspective. And similar to going to the national meetings are hosted by different chapters every year, and they're always fun to go to. There's lots of interesting events. Like I said before, this year's one was in Austin. The previous one was in Lodi, and we hosted it. And next year, it's Chancellery is hosting it. So people will have an opportunity if they live in the Sacramento area to join and check it out.
Thank you so much for your time.
You were welcome. Thanks for having us. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to learn more about it.
Yeah, it's funny. Just looking, doing a little research into this in terms of the other sort of orders and things that exist, and there are, what people kind of refer to as the secret societies of wine. Like these sort of behind the scene things that you've kind of heard about, but nobody. It's like you have to know the secret handshake or something like that. And I think some people may think that that KOV is kind of like that too. I mean, I got introduced to it by being part of the Lodi Amateur Vintners and went to a joint thing. And it was kind of like, I didn't even know there was a KOV chapter in Lodi. And then next thing you know, I'm in charge of it. So there you go. One thing leads to another.
Yeah.
No arm twisting needed, huh?
None whatsoever.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of wine.
Thanks for listening to Chick and Gordon give us some more info about the Knights of the Vine. To find out more information about joining, go to kov.org. There are also some unique websites for the individual chapters. You can search the one for your area. You can follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at Indie Wine Podcast. And feel free to email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you can tell your wine friends about the podcast too and help spread the word, I'd really appreciate it. Rating or subscribing helps too. There's also now a Patreon set up if you feel like supporting the podcast monetarily to hopefully allow for more episodes, more travel, and to help defray other costs. The link is in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.